Something changed in the geometry of this contest when a government drew its own line, quietly, without a press conference, and without crediting anyone else for asking. The order that did it came from Taipei. It arrived on June 10, 2026, when Taiwan's Ministry of Economic Affairs amended its Strategic Export Control customer list to add Huawei Technologies and Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation as designated entities, requiring formal prior government approval before any Taiwanese exporter ships chips or lithography equipment to either company. We're going to read that order twice, once for what it plainly establishes, and once for what it carefully does not say, because the silence in this text is the argument. The instrument is a legal amendment. It did not build a new framework from the ground up. It extended an existing domestic control architecture to cover two specifically named counterparties, which means the ministry already had this mechanism and chose to apply it here. That choice is recorded. The scope of the order covers two distinct categories simultaneously: finished chips, which are the end product, and lithography equipment, which is the means of making the end product. One document, one amendment, both layers of the production chain brought inside the same perimeter at the same moment. The operative mechanism the order establishes is prior approval, not prohibition. A Taiwanese exporter may still ship to either named entity. The channel remains open. What the order requires is that the ministry evaluate and authorize each individual transaction before it proceeds. The stated justification, to the extent the document offers one, is grounded in Taiwan's own strategic, industrial, and economic interests, authored entirely under Taiwanese law. Huawei and Semiconductor Manufacturing International are listed as customer list entities, which is the ministry's standard legal category for counterparties whose transactions require heightened scrutiny. The record shows this is the same mechanism the ministry applies to other strategic customers regardless of where they are incorporated. Those are the operative clauses. Now read the text again, this time for what it declines to include. The order does not name the United States. It does not reference the Bureau of Industry and Security. It does not cite the entity list, any allied coordination framework, or any bilateral agreement. An order of this consequence, touching the two most prominent targets of American semiconductor export controls, could have acknowledged parallel multilateral action. It does not. The ministry wrote this instrument as if no prior instruction from Washington conditioned it, and the text gives us no clause to contradict that framing. That is not evidence of hidden coordination. It is an omission, and the record does not say what lies behind it. The choice of prior approval over prohibition is doing specific legal work, and the document does not explain that work. Prohibition would have closed the channel permanently. It would have signaled alignment with the strictest posture the United States has adopted. Prior approval preserves Taiwanese administrative discretion over every individual transaction. The document asserts regulatory authority while simultaneously retaining the capacity to grant exceptions. What the order does not say is under what circumstances those exceptions would be granted. The criteria for opening the gate are not disclosed in the published instrument. The text builds the gate and then declines to describe the gatekeeping standards. The inclusion of lithography equipment in the same document as finished chips is the detail the order does not explain. Lithography equipment is upstream of the chip. It is the machine that makes the chip possible, which means it sits at the earliest choke point in the production chain. Placing it alongside finished devices in a single instrument means the ministry drew a perimeter around the full chain at once. The order does not cite a technology transfer rationale for bundling them together. It does not distinguish between equipment types or between node generations. The silence around why lithography was folded into the same amendment, rather than addressed in a separate instrument with its own stated basis, is one the document leaves entirely unfilled. When a legal instrument draws a perimeter that wide without explaining the geometry itself becomes the most legible fact in the record. Think of the difference between a locked door and a door with a keypad. A prohibition is the locked door. The channel closes. Prior approval is the keypad. The channel stays open, but the ministry holds the code and decides, transaction by transaction, who enters. The June 10th order built a keypad. The text says nothing about who holds the other copies. The record does not say whether any classified annex diplomatic exchange, or interagency agreement conditions, how the ministry will exercise its approval discretion. The published text is the visible layer. What lies beneath it is not disclosed at that granularity. The order names Huawei Technologies and Semiconductor Manufacturing International as entities, but does not specify which legal subsidiaries of either company fall within scope. Both operate through complex subsidiary architectures. The document does not map them. That gap matters practically, because a designated entity regime that does not define the perimeter of the designated entity leaves the enforcement question partially open. The record also does not establish whether this amendment will be reviewed on a fixed schedule, expanded to cover additional entities, or rescinded. And it does not say whether the ministry's approval criteria will ever be published. The instrument creates the obligation without publishing the standard. One further omission belongs in this reading. An absent clause is not proof of intent. It is not evidence of a back-channel instruction or a classified annex. Close reading can only tell us what the document declined to include, not why. What the record settles is narrower than what it implies. Taiwan has a domestic legal instrument covering these two entities, authored in Taiwanese administrative language, grounded in Taiwanese law, and everything beyond that perimeter, the coordination question, the enforcement question, the exceptions question, remains outside the four corners of this document. The decisive silence is the one the order maintains about its own origin. The text does not state that it was made at Washington's request, in coordination with Washington, or in response to any external pressure. It equally does not state that it was made in deliberate independence from Washington. The ministry wrote a document that is, on its face, simply a domestic administrative action. By declining to locate this action inside any alliance structure or bilateral agreement, the text produces a legal and political object that belongs entirely to Taipei. That is what the order establishes, without saying it. Read plainly, the June 10th order is a trade control amendment. Read against its silences, the absent American reference, the unexplained bundling of equipment with chips, the discretionary gate rather than the categorical wall. It is a document that asserts Taiwan's standing as an independent node in a contest the text never names as a contest, but which the structure of the instrument implies. The chip war's geometry has three actors now. The document named two companies. What it did not name may be the more consequential entry. The question this order raises but does not answer is what happens at the gate. The document to read next is the ministry's published approval criteria, if and when they appear, or the record of the first disclosed exemption. The standards for opening the keypad will tell us more about Taiwan's actual strategic calculus than the instrument that installed it. If you want to read that document the same way, twice, against its silences, subscribe, and we will be here when it surfaces.